Hi guys, today we're going to look at something very unusual, but I hope you will find it beneficial. We're going to be considering offenses against children. In this video, I will be going through a list of 100 criminal offenses against children, and the purpose of this video is to help professionals know the vast array of legislation which are available for the protection of children. It also will enable professionals to be able to uh, carry out or identify those who present as potential risk to children. It's worth mentioning that a reference to an offence in the list of offences I'm going to provide you with could also include a reference to an attempt, conspiracy, or incitement to commit that offence, and a reference to aiding, abetting, counselling, or procuring the commission of that offence. Unless I state otherwise, the victim of the offences I'm going to be discussing today will be under the age of 18. The first one we're going to deal with is abandonment of children under 2. This is provided for in section 27 offences. Before I go on any further, I just thought to also say that these offences are applicable in the United Kingdom, particularly in England. So if you're not within the territory of England and Wales, it could still be useful in the sense that you have an array of what is considered abhorrent and wrong in the United Kingdom, and that may well inform your assessment or any work you are doing. So I'll start again. First one is abandonment of children under 2. This is provided for in section 27, Offences Against Persons Act 1861. Next one, abduction of a woman by force or for the sake of her property. This is provided for in section 17, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Abduction of child in care, stroke police protection, stroke take away, induce away, assist to run away and keep away. That's provided for in section 49, Children Act 1989. Abduction of defective from parent or guardian. That's provided for in section 21, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Abduction of unmarried girl under 16 from parent or guardian. This is provided for in section 20, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Abduction of unmarried girl under 18 from parent or guardian. This is provided for in section 19, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Abuse of position of trust, causing a child to watch a sexual act. This is provided for in section 19, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Abuse of position of trust, causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity. This is provided for in section 17, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Abuse of position of trust, sexual activity in the presence of a child. This is provided for in section 18, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Abuse of position of trust, sexual activity with a child. This is provided for in section 16, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Abuse of trust, abuse of position of trust, causing a child to watch a sexual act. This is provided for in section 3, Sexual Offences Amendment Act 2000. Administering a substance with intent. This is provided for in section 61, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Administering drugs to obtain or facilitate intercourse. This is provided for in section 4, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Administering poison or wounding with intent to murder. This is provided for in Section 11, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Aiding, abetting, counseling, or procuring the suicide of a child or young person. This is provided for in Section 2, Suicide Act 1961. Allowing persons under 16 to be in brothels. This is provided for in Section 3, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Arranging or facilitating child prostitution or pornography. This is provided for in Section 50, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Arranging or facilitating commission of a child sex offence. This is provided for in Section 14, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Assault by penetration. This is provided for in Section 2, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Assault occasioning actual bodily harm. I repeat that. Assault occasioning actual bodily harm. Section 47. Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Assault of a child under 13 by penetration. This is provided for in Section 6, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Assault or battery. This is provided for in English common law. Assault with intent to commit buggery. This is provided for in Section 16, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Buggery, where the victim is under the age of 16. This is provided for in Section 12, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Burglary, by entering a building or part of a building with intent to rape a child. Section 9, Theft Act 1969. Caseworkers, causing a person with a mental disorder to watch a sexual act. This is provided for in Section 41, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Care workers, causing or inciting sexual activity. This is provided for in Section 39, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Care workers, sexual activity in the presence of a person with a mental disorder. This is provided for in Section 40, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Care workers, sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder. I repeat that. Care workers, sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder. This is provided for in Section 38, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing a child to watch a sexual act. This is provided for in Section 12, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. This is provided for in Section 4, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing a person with a mental disorder to engage in or agree to engage in sexual activity by inducement, threat, or deception. This is provided for in Section 35, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing a person with a mental disorder to watch a sexual act by inducement, threat, or deception. This is provided for in Section 37, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing a person with a mental disorder impeding choice to watch a sexual act. This is provided for in Section 33, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing or allowing persons under 16 to be used for begging. This is provided for in Section 4, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Causing or allowing the death of a child or vulnerable adult. This is provided for in Section 5, Domestic Violence, Crime and Victims Act 2004. Causing or encouraging prostitution of defective. This is provided for in Section 29, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Causing or encouraging prostitution of or intercourse with or indecent assault on girl under 16. This is provided for in Section 28, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Causing or inciting a child to engage in sexual activity. This is provided for in Section 10, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing or inciting a child under 13 to engage in sexual activity. This is provided for in Section 8, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing or inciting a person with a mental disorder, impeding choice, to engage in sexual activity. This is provided for in Section 31, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing or inciting child prostitution or pornography. This is provided for in Section 48, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing or inciting prostitution for gain. This is provided for in Section 52, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Causing prostitution of women. This is provided for in Section 22, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Child sex offences committed by a children or young person. This is provided for in Section 13, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Child stealing. This is provided for in Section 56, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Committing an offence with intent to commit a sexual offence in a case where the intended offence was an offence against a child. This is provided for in Section 62, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Conspiring or soliciting to commit murder. This is provided for in Section 4, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Controlling a child prostitute or a child involved in pornography. This is provided for in Section 49, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Controlling prostitution for gain. This is provided for in Section 53, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Cruelty to children. This is provided for in Section 1, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Detention of a woman in a brothel or other premises. This is provided for in Section 24, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Drunk in charge of a child under 7 years. This is provided for in Section 2, Licensing Act 1902. Engaging in sexual activity in the presence of a child. This is provided for in Section 11, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Engaging in sexual activity in the presence of a person with a mental disorder, impeding choice. This is provided for in Section 32, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Engaging in sexual activity in the presence, procured by inducement, threat, or deception of a person with a mental disorder. This is provided for in Section 36, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Exposing children under 7 to risk of burning. This is provided for in Section 11, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Exposure. This is provided for in Section 66, Sexual Offences Act 2003. False imprisonment. This is provided for under common law. False imprisonment is an offence which is provided for under English common law. Give or cause to be given intoxicating liquor to a child under 5 years. This is provided for in Section 5, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Incest by a man. This is provided for in Section 10, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Incest by a woman. This is provided for in Section 11, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Inciting a child family member to engage in sexual activity. This is provided for in Section 26, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Inciting girl under 16 to have incestuous sexual intercourse. This is provided for under Section 54, Criminal Law 1977. Indecency between men, gross indecency. This is provided for in Section 13, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Indecent assault on a man. Section 15, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Indecent assault on a woman. This is provided for under Section 14, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Indecent conduct towards young child. This is provided for in Section 1, Indecency with Children Act 1960. Indecent exposure. This is provided for in Section 4, Vagrancy Act 1824. Indecent exposure. This is provided for under Section 28, Town Police Clauses Act 1847. Indecent photographs of children. This is provided for in Section 1, Protection of Children Act 1978. Inducement, threat, or deception to procure sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder. This is provided for in Section 34, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Infanticide. This is provided for in English common law. Infanticide. This is provided for in Section 1, Infanticide Act 1938. Intercourse with a girl under 13. This is provided for in Section 5, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Intercourse with a girl under 16. This is provided for in Section 6, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Intercourse with defective. This is provided for under Section 7, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Kidnapping. This is provided for in English common law. Living on earnings of male prostitution. This is provided for in Section 5, Sexual Offences Act 1967. Maliciously administering poison. This is provided for in Section 23, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Man living on earnings of prostitution. This is provided for under Section 30, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Manslaughter. This is provided for in English common law. Meeting a child following sexual grooming, etc. This is provided for in Section 15, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Murder. This is provided for in English common law. Offences of abduction of a child by a parent. This is provided for in Section 1, Child Abduction Act 1984. Offences of abduction of child by other persons. This is provided for under Section 2, Child Abduction Act 1984. Paying for sexual services of a child. This is provided for under Section 47, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Permitting a girl between 13 and 16 to use premises for intercourse. This is provided for under Section 26, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Permitting a girl under 13 to use premises for intercourse. This is provided for under Section 25, Sexual Offences Act 1956. permitting the effective to use premises for intercourse. This is provided for under Section 27, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Possession of indecent photographs of children. This is provided for in Section 160, Section 160, Criminal Justice Act 1988. Procuration of girl under 21. This is provided for under Section 23, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Procurement of a woman by false pretenses. This is provided for under Section 3, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Procurement of a woman by threat. This is provided for under Section 2, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Procurement of defective. This is provided for under Section 9, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Prohibition against person under 16 taking part in performances endangering life and limb. I repeat that. Prohibition against person under 16 taking part in performances endangering life and limb. This is provided for in Section 23, Children and Young Persons Act 1933. Procuring others to commit homosexual act by procuring a child to commit an act of buggery with any person, or procuring any person to commit an act of buggery with a child. This is provided for in Section 4, Sexual Offences Act 1967. Rape. This is provided for in Section 1, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Rape, again, this is provided for in rape is provided for within the Sexual Offences Act of 1956. I believe that's Section 1. Rape of a child under 13. This is provided for in Section 5, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Recovery of missing or unlawfully held children. This is provided for under Section 50, Children Act 1989. Sexual activity with a child. This is provided for in Section 9, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Sexual activity with a child, family member. This is provided for in Section 25, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder impeding choice. This is provided for under Section 30, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Sexual assault. This is provided for under Section 3, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Sexual assault of a child under 13. This is provided for under Section 7, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Sexual intercourse with parents. This is provided for under Section 128, Mental Health Act 1959. Supplying or offering to supply a Class A drug to a child, being concerned in the supplying of such a drug to a child, or being concerned in the making to a child of an offer to supply such a drug. This is provided for under Section 4, Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. Threats to kill. This is provided for under Section 16, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. Traffic in prostitution. This is provided for in Section 145, Nationality, Immigration and Asylum Act 2002. Trafficking into the UK for sexual exploitation. This is provided for in Section 57, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Trafficking out of the UK for sexual exploitation. This is provided for under Section 59, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Trafficking people for exploitation. This is provided for in Section 4, Asylum and Immigration, Treatments of Claimants, etc., 2004. trafficking within the UK for sexual exploitation. This is provided for in Section 58, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Trespass with intent to commit a sexual offence in a case where the intended offence was an offence against a child. I repeat that. Trespass with intent to commit a sexual offence in a case where the intended offence was an offence against a child. This is provided for in Section 63, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Voyeurism. This is provided for in Section 67, Sexual Offences Act 2003. Women exercising control over prostitute. This is provided for in Section 31, Sexual Offences Act 1956. Wounding and causing grievous bodily harm, inflicting bodily injury. This is provided for in Section 20, Offences Against a Person Act 1861. Wounding and causing grievous bodily harm, wounding with intent. This is provided for in Section 18, Offences Against Persons Act 1861. We have gone through a list of criminal offences, and I believe this is not exhaustive. There are others, but these ones have been listed to enable anyone working with children to spot incidents of abuse or any harm being done to a child. Please provide us with your comments and feedback at admin@tinedu.co.uk, or you can just leave a comment below this video, and I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.